You say something? Oh. Well, good day. Good day to you all, and welcome to another edition of New Covenants Community Connect. We have I want to invite all of you all to stop what you're doing if you can, but if not, whenever you are partaker of this particular interaction, want you to hone in, keep your mind and your heart open, let some revelation, some understanding come in. Sure to apply to your life, because the subject today is something that we all deal with. In this Black History Month, we're going to look at Blacks in government by speaking to someone who's been in government for quite a few years. As a matter of fact, I would say as far as government goes, this fellow is pretty long in the tooth. And as I am Elder Chris Burns, this is also someone who's familiar, very familiar, to both Bishop Dwight and Pastor Bernadette Elijah. This is Pastor Melvin C. Burns II. So first of all, just say hello if you don't mind. Hello, Melvin. How are you? Hello, Pastor Melvin. How are you?
I'm fine, Elder Chris. Elder Stanley. Which one should I call you today?
You can call me whichever. Okay. Any of the names that are permittable are permittable.
All right. I'm fine. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine.
Good.
And for anybody who's noticed the same last name, Pastor Melvin is a natural brother of myself and Pastor Bernadette, brother-in-law, brother-in-law of Bishop Dwight Elijah. And so today we're going to talk about Blacks in government. That's the subject. I want to say ahead of time, if there's a few rabbit holes, that's fine. Rabbit holes are cool to and I only have a few questions written down, so I want our guest to feel free to pour out in whichever direction, even change to a different direction if that's what he believes it ought to be done at that particular time. We'll trust him in that. But Blacks in government. First of all, let's start right here. What is your government title at this very moment?
Okay, good. Let me also thank Bishop Dwight and Pastor Bernadette for inviting me to be a part of this program today. Most of my career, I've served as a city manager in local government. Currently, I serve as an interim city manager for the city of Muskegon Heights, Michigan.
All right. Well, with that, why don't we talk a little bit about how far your association with government goes? How far would you say that goes?
Wow. To be honest, going back elementary school, middle school, I always say my career started with carrying those political brochures around for local, state, federal candidates, knocking on doors, door hangers, those flyers in the windshields. So I think that's my involvement. I think from there, like a lot of people, my profession, I was involved in student council, student government, kind of piqued my interest. Went to college and got studied government. But really as a career, I think probably I've started off probably while I was in college running some summer recreation programs, working for Civic. That's probably where it started, somewhere around 19, 20 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, now with the part about your connection to the preparation for the types of jobs that you've had or positions that you've had over the last several decades, what was the major that you went into, or did it change somewhere in there? When was that decision? Was that made before you went to college, or after you were in the water, you decided you were going to go in some other direction? How'd that come about?
This being Black History Month, I want to make a couple of points that somewhere around mid to late 70s, I saw Andrew Young speak. Chicago, you might remember. And I remember distinctly when I heard him speak, I said to myself, that's how I want to present myself. He had a great influence on me, wanting to serve.
Right.
I went to college. I wanted to be an elected official. I've never been one. I wanted to, actually my goal, I didn't want to tell anybody publicly. I wanted to be the next black. There'd only been one black senator since Reconstruction. That was Edward Brooke from Massachusetts.
Right.
And my goal was to be the next black senator. After my second year of college, I had a professor talk to me about public administration rather than political science. And he said, I'd read a couple of your papers, and we got this new program, public administration. He said, I seem to do a good job analyzing policies. Public administration kind of took me from the political science to more of I think I call it an employable discipline, where I got into accounting, budgeting, computer programming, statistics. And so that kind of led me to, I think I wanted to work in government. This is during my undergraduate years. I was home one year, and there was a guy speaking at a high school graduation, and he mentioned city management. And I'd always kind of knew about it, but I remember hearing him speak at that moment, thinking, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to be a city manager. And that kind of tied me this idea of, I don't want to be elected. I want to serve people. And this is the way to be a professional, have a work professional, have a real job where I don't get elected, but still serve people.
Right. Okay. How exactly did Andrew Young affect you? Said he affected you. Said you wanted to present yourself. How do you see? I asked that question because even in recent years, he said some things I thought were extremely profound, but he's not right on the front page anymore of a lot of things.
He spoke clearly and deliberately. He was a minister, but he's also a public servant. He found a way to blend those two together. Because later he would serve as an elected official, but I think just the way who he was, it wasn't like I'm a public servant here, I'm a minister here. He spoke clearly and decisively about policy as clearly as he would about reading the scripture or his favorite Bible passage. I've heard him throughout the years, and not in a sermon kind of way, but just, this is how my life, these are how these things do tie together and why I serve.
That's great. So where did you go to school?
I went to undergraduate school at Oakland University, not in California, in Rochester, Michigan, where I have a BS degree in public administration. Then I also have a master's degree from The Ohio State University. So I do have dual citizenship in Michigan and Ohio.
Okay, I have a question toward the end, maybe, or in the middle somewhere about that. I want to get you relaxed first.
Okay, yeah. And more recently, I also have a master's degree in biblical studies from Cornerstone University, the Grand Rapids Theological Seminary.
Right. Great. But how much does your faith play in how you do what you do in government?
And thank you. That's a good question.
Thank you.
It's hard to answer because it's who I am.
Right.
So it's not like, how often do you use your Spanish or your French? My faith is who I am. Right. And so I remember first labor negotiations in the city in Ohio. And my thinking was, labor negotiations, you got to lie at the negotiating table. and I remember talking to the city manager, who's a good Episcopalian brother.
All right.
And, I told him, I said, well, this might be tough. He said, because, I don't know if I can lie. And he said, don't.
Right.
And it was like, you're right, I don't have to.
Yeah.
And so people think, well, you're in politics, you're going to have to lie. No, there's things you can tell people I can't tell you, or I can't discuss that, or I can't share it. And so I don't, when I terminate people, when I've had to let people go make tough decisions, I've never done them outside of the fact that this is who I am as a believer. I do things that are unpopular, things that people don't like, but I was hired to do that job. And if there's some part that ever comes to conflict, I either won't do it or I've decided that's not the job for me.
Yeah, I think that's a very good nugget for what you have to do, or even other positions where someone believes that negotiating has to be slipshod.
No,
has to be hide the card. It's in actuality, some of the best negotiators that I've ever seen didn't hide anything.
Yes,
And
yes.
some of the most productive things that ever happened with me, where there was negotiation, was in the same arena of things. Yeah.
Yeah,
Have you ever come? Oh, go ahead.
I say you're exactly right. There's things you absolutely can't do, and to tell somebody up front, yes, I can, or no, I can. I can think about it and be honest about it. And I think that gains you respect. When you sit down with people over time, as they know you're going to be straight with them. They know we know what each side's there to do. You do your job, but to know you're dealing with somebody who's going to tell you things straight, and you can bank on their word. I think it makes the whole process go better.
Yeah, this is not one of the questions I have written down, but in your observation, not necessarily specifically or not necessarily limited to the job duties of a city manager, have you seen in politics or the political structure or lack of structure, whichever type of politics or government, where people who are of faith have a challenge with certain parts when it comes to rules or laws or ways of doing things?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of specific examples. And keep in mind, I've worked in state government, county government, as well as again most of my time in local government. Um, I think sometimes what I enjoy people come and ask me questions.
Mm.
Say no, you get the challenge. People say, well, how can you do this as a person of God? There have been police officers, firefighters who may have been a passing comment about certain things, but um, I you know I can recall like a pastor who never voted for liquor licenses. Now, whether I agree with that, his feeling was, um, I don't vote for liquor licenses.
Mm.
And I have a different view of that, but that's just right. There are some pastors who marijuana is legal in Michigan,
Mm.
and each establishment has to have a license, so they will consistently not vote for those licenses based on their convictions as a believer.
Mm.
And so I respect that. That's their right, but I think you never lose sight of the Christian is who I am. I'm either elected or hired for this specific job.
Mm-hmm.
And you always have the choice to not be in that position. But and you should be the person you are, but you can't ever lose sight of for me being hired or anybody that's hired what job they hired you to do, and can you or can you not do that job?
In your preparation for the disciplines and the positions you've held uh, in your college years, whether it's at Oakland or whether it was at the Ohio State University, what type of representation did you see concerning Blacks, African Americans in the fields, in those particular fields, or what? And maybe what do you know about even on a broader scale with other colleges or across the nation from that time to now?
An undergrad, very few. Most Blacks stayed in political science.
Mm.
And honestly, the reason being because science is more your social science classes. It's a different challenge. You know, again, I had to take business calculus, had to take a couple semesters of accounting, economics, advanced economics. This is going back to the early 80s. So I had to take computer programming. I would never tell this anybody this publicly, but I actually learned how to program in BASIC, 83 and 84. And honestly, I understand the basics of computer programming. Now it's a different world today.
Mm.
The basics of we had to so now again, this is in the days of I graduated in 84. Remember around 82, 83, what happens? Apple Computer comes out. Personal computers explode. So I'm doing this in the days we're transferring from mainframes to personal computers. And so from there, I go to Ohio State, big school, 50,000 students. I'm in a public administration program, about 200 students, about 50 new students come in each year. I think of the year I came in around those 50 students, there was a group of 5 or 6 of us that all came in together, Black students. And we had most of our classes together. That first year was overwhelmed. And much like the early days, in the 20th century when Black people were at many colleges, we helped each other get through, especially that first year.
Right.
We studied together, call each other, go over notes, because you'd be like, do you know what they're talking about? Like, nope, I don't either. And Bishop Dwight and Pastor Bernadette may remember this. They're the ones that actually, quick little story, they're the ones that drove me to Oakland University.
Ah.
First turns around 7 years later, they actually drove me to Ohio State when I moved in. A little bit of history, little Melvin Burns history there. And they probably remember I was so hesitant, reluctant. It was like, I'm just going to go in here and get my time done. But there was so much I didn't know. And we worked together, we studied together, we helped each other. It was a challenge. A lot of people not like you there. The environment wasn't necessarily hostile; it was just foreign. You don't know necessarily who you can talk to, who you trust, and you built it over time. And Ohio State and the program were very good to me. But when you come in, you don't know. So we relied on each other quite a bit that first year, especially.
Do you have any insight on what the representation of that kind of field is today compared to, how long ago was that?
Oh gosh, I left Ohio State in '87. I was out of profession from after 2006 until the last 2 years, but I don't think statistics have changed much. I'll say it this way: I don't know numbers. I can tell you this. I think I did a check a year or two ago. If you think of all the local governments that have city managers, city administrators, I'm sure that African American administrators make up less than 10%. I tell people this way, honestly, when you think about starting your career, and usually start as an assistant, there are, aside from cities that don't have city managers, you start thinking, there are whole states I'm not really going to waste my time applying. You put a big X through North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming.
Why? No, okay.
Not any there. But
right.
You're trying to, if I got to spend 72 cents on a stamp, like, or just like where are logical places I'm going to get hired?
Right.
That can happen, and they did. And I got hired in the city with 18,000. When I got an assistant city manager, population 18,000, less than 5% of the community was Black. And it was because there was a white city manager who was committed to someone getting in the profession. So he hired me. When I left there 3 years later, they loved me there. People hated to see me go because they wanted somebody. You still want somebody who can do the job.
Right.
So the opportunity is created, but you still have to be able to do the job.
You mentioned political science a couple of times now, so I swing back to something on that. It just occurred to me that you were going in as a political science major, or that's what you thought. That's what you thought about. And we have an older brother who did the same thing. He didn't stay in political science either. So for anybody out there who may be listening and thinking about political science, what do you know about that type of field? Where does that type of, I know that it leads into things that doesn't have anything to do with political science often, but are there fields that political science majors end up going to that's actually applied to it other than teaching other political science classes?
A lot of them go to law school.
Yeah.
And I tell people, you can major in English and go to law school.
True.
It'll help you. If you think your career in government is still not a bad degree to have, my suggestion is always you've got to develop some hard skills. And I talk to people all the time who want to get in public administration into local government. And, you need to learn how to analyze policy for sure. You need to understand the history of government, how things work. But you also want some hard skills, whether that's being in budget or finance, human resources, but you want to add some hard skills to yourself. Just makes you more employable. And again, when you say working in government, people use these broad terms like ours. Go, well, what does that mean? What does working in government mean? You got treasury departments, dog catcher. So you have all these different departments. There's assessing. So there's all these different departments that qualify that as working in government, either by you're an appointed or elected person in government. So I generally have a hard time with that broad term, just because I'm like, well, what does that mean? But you could have a desire to work in government, but effectively not just being a policymaker.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna expand on and narrow down different levels and parts and pieces to government in a moment. But for anyone who is listening, you still have an interest in political science. You don't have to give up, but you may want to be aware. As a matter of fact, you can still do that and go to law school. Not only that, maybe you can have a podcast. Who knows? pertaining to city government.
Yes.
At this juncture, have you seen many changes in the way that city governments handle themselves? Let's say over the last 40 years.
Yeah.
40 or more. You choose a time, but
yes. Yes. And I'd like to tell you it's good.
You can tell us the truth. We can always pray.
There's a couple of things happening. One of the reasons I like local government is most local government, you got your big cities. Most local government is in smaller cities.
Right.
It's nonpartisan. You want your trash picked up. You want the roads paved. You want clean water delivered to your home. Those things don't have a whole lot of, when I say partisan, Republican, Democrat, Independent pull to them. You just want good government. And so to me, that's what's attractive to local government. What you have seen over the last 40 years is that some of that partisanship's creeping into local government in areas that don't necessarily you always see in the past. And then I think and this is part of how economies are, it's just a demand on the services of local government. At one extreme, you have local governments getting into a lot of social areas. And we're forced to, things like homelessness, people not having jobs, job skills. A lot of times, other programs might have dealt with those areas. And so you see some local governments getting more into those areas. On the other end of the spectrum, you have some people that are adamant that local government shouldn't do anything. And so there's a lot more of a demand on what local governments can do. The creep in of partisanship, I think, at the local government level, just from my opinion, in areas that weren't there before, makes it a bit more of a challenge.
There's a cliche, maybe you've heard over years, all politics is local. I was in a conversation a few days ago about that conversation, and I realized, there's a bunch of different ways to think about it, or it's just another cliche that you can throw out the window.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about that cliche about what it's meant since it was attributed to at different times for different purposes?
Yeah, and I hear it from time to time. I mean, you think about, everybody gets up and watch the world news, or you can't avoid seeing world news. It's on your feeds. On some channel you turn to, you get world news. But if you think about it, the government that affects you most every single day is your local government. Is my neighbor building a house 10 feet tall and blocking out the sun? That's local government orders, So that's the one that touches you the most. And so those are things that I feel like that impact your life the most on a daily basis. And so somebody's making decisions about who can do what in your neighborhood, on your street, where you drive to shop and take your kids to school. Somebody's making decisions about those. And the level of people that get involved and who makes those decisions. So those things that happen. Our state governments are made up of a bunch of localities. And so, voters vote for these people, but we see in almost every place, these cities have influence on what these people decide. You talk about one of those changes I do for the last 20 years, I do political analysis at election time. We used to look at state maps. Now, when we look at elections, we're looking at county and city maps to determine where states will go.
Okay.
We weren't doing that 20 years ago.
I have on one of my questions something about what that particular thing you're speaking of, especially around the election times with the radio station, different things like that. And it also covers two other questions. So I'm gonna slow you down on these.
Okay.
So we'll come. How about the relationship? And a lot of times people don't. Not that I have a truly in-depth understanding of this, I believe, but plenty of people don't understand the difference between what's federal, what's state, what's county, what's city. In other words, sometimes the government is the government.
Yes.
Maybe speak on a little bit of the differences, or maybe even from your place, challenges or whether there are tough challenges or not in how they interact with one another.
Yeah. And let me say this, and I'll go right there. Even I like to explain to people what I do with city management. Means I'm appointed by a city council. And I tell people this: what's the requirement to be on your local city council or township board? Being 18 years old and living in that community. That's it.
That's it.
No education, no degrees, no experience. It's who people vote for.
Right.
That's why I love this profession, is you bring in a professional to manage your community.
Right.
So I said it to say this: most people don't. People come in all the time. For example, you get a tax bill, and people come to City Hall and say, "This is crazy. I got all these taxes on here." Then I point out to them, "Let me show you all the people that get your tax money. You got the county, the state, the school district, intermediate school district, the community college, the library district, the soil and water conservation district." So you got 9 or 10 people with their hands on the tax bill, but we're the ones that send out the tax bill, so we get the complaints.
Now, when you said some people come in there and they're like, "Hey, look at this tax bill,"
yes,
were you talking about me specifically, or are you talking about people do that all the time? I have done that.
Most people aren't aware really of all the political jurisdictions they reside in.
Right.
You may live in a city, and you might know the city boundaries. You live in a county. You live in a state. There's a federal government, but you're also in a school district. You're in an intermediate school district in Michigan. You might be in a soil conservation district. You might be in a district for a drain commission. So there are all these and these are all levels of government, which means they have some say and some influence on your life.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I think part of what I do enjoy about this is educating people. I get to go to do things like this, go to classrooms and teach students about local government and what it means. But most people don't know those boundaries. They start with your tax bill, and everybody that's got on your tax bill has got a hand that you ought to be. If you got a concern, you ought to find out what part of your life do they affect, and say something to them if you have an issue. But yeah, we get people, and it's good to have the knowledge base. We get people that really will call about some of it, and sometimes they don't know who else to call. So I'm calling City Hall, and it feels good to sit down and say, "Well, we don't deal with that, but here's where to direct your anger."
The redirection, yes.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the interaction between the different governments, and you also used the word influence. And this is a thought of mine: different influence. Different parts of government depend on other governments. Sometimes that influence is simply funding and things like that. And so, from national to state to different local, county and city and school boards, there's usually requirements for that. But then you've also mentioned that sometimes you have to deal with even on the city level.
Yes.
The different issues of there being politics where there didn't used to be politics and things like that. Yeah. Has there been any newer? Doesn't even have to be newer. Just touch on that a little bit as far as the influence and how monies are dealt with from one to the other, as far as the words. Yeah, that's how I'm thinking about influence. I know there's other ways to be influential, but sometimes it ends up being the dollar funding. Will we be able to get what we need here?
Yeah. Keep in mind, sometimes we provide services to each other, or county provides services to different cities. Easy example, the jail. The county provides a jail for most of the cities around. So we provide service to each other. And here in Michigan, in Muskegon County, we have a 911 emergency system. The county provides that. All the cities pay into that system that they manage. And so you'll have those exchanges. In exchange for that, they have a board where every city's represented on that board that manages central dispatch. So you find those kind of things where there's money, but there's also we interact and we exchange who may serve on there. States are always looking for local government people to serve on board commissions, whether it's your elected officials or your appointed officials. And so we want to hear from each other because those entities know how they influence each other. But I think what surprised a lot of people is we interact with other cities around us, the county. We interact with those people all the time, you know, probably more than most people realize. And I think, like I said, the lower the level employees are, the more they interact without the political influence. I want to say this about that word politics too, because it's pejorative. It's a dirty word now.
True.
And it doesn't have to be.
True.
Politics, I remember one of my favorite definitions is really it's the study of political science is the study of who gets what and how they do it. And so you and two of your neighbor, your neighborhood has to decide who we're all going to use to pick up trash. So we all have the same company instead of 10 trucks coming in here. You all discuss it, you come to agreement. That's politics.
Right.
It's how do we get things done. And so it's not a dirty word. It's not a dirty word it's not dirty for me to agree with you on this issue and then you agree with me on another issue. It's made that seem like that's wrong and dirty. No, that's negotiation. That's how our system of government should work. And for the last 10, 12 years, that's what we've seen it stall out. Is instead of one side saying, okay, I can live with this if you can live with this. Right. And we get something in the middle, we get people back up the corner and says, if it's not my way, I'm not even going to play. I'm taking my ball. And so politics is not a dirty word. It's negotiations. It's give and take. It's let's find something we all can agree on. Right. And again, even at the local level, we see some of that now. It's like, no, when is it, well, if it's not going my way, I'm not even coming to the meeting. So we don't have enough people to show up to even discuss an item. That I think that idea of politics fails the people they're supposed to represent.
Well, I should have wrote this down to get back off the rabbit hole I'm about to go down now. I think, and you're right. The word has gotten. I guess I wouldn't say it's gotten dirty. I should say it's gotten dirtier and dirtier. Because when we looked at something that was 200 years ago or about 2,000 years ago, it was dirty then. Yeah. But it has not gotten cleaner. Yeah. And it also applies, because of that, it gets applied to a lot of situations that are certainly outside of the government realm or things like that. I mean, my son is not starting on the football team, and I think it's because of politics.
Yeah.
And it could be, but it might be because he can't catch a ball, run, or jump. It might be some of that stuff too. Yeah. And so the words it can be used for all. That particular word can be used for all types of things.
And here's a strange thought. Think about that word is kind of uniquely Western in a lot of ways. If you think about it. If we went, I remember this example. If you went to some other countries and the idea of what gets done is like, okay, who's the smartest person? They'll make the decisions for us. Who's got the best skills, or who's from the richest family?
Right.
The idea of us negotiating is like, well, no, they made the decision. The rest of us live with it. So if we say, okay, we're going to have a church dinner, who's available on the third Saturday? Well, the fourth Saturday works for me. Okay, we'll do it then. That's just our way of thinking.
Right.
But that's in a sense, that's politics. That's the idea of, okay, how do we get to where we want to get?
How do we get it done?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, in the interactions that goes on between cities, I would presume, and I don't like to use that word, but that's what it would be since I don't know the answer. I would presume that where that occurs, the city managers and others involved, but the city managers might get to know each other pretty well. If they're able to keep their job for long enough to know each other well, then they could get to know each other pretty well over time.
Yeah, we do here, and this happens in a lot of communities. We meet informally once a month, every other month, and just have informally have dinner, mayors and managers. Just talk. There's a separate managers luncheon every month, and just non-formal. Talk about what's going on, how things are going. We share war stories, and that's in addition to all the things that we may serve on together, different committees, things we see each other at. But we all speak the same language. We swap stories about our staff or our city councils, those kind of things. That's why we share information that may help somebody else. There's a lot of camaraderie in the profession, a desire to see other guys succeed, and I think it's a very noble profession. I really do. A lot of high ethical standard. We have a code of conduct, and I honestly really do. most city managers, you'll find a lot of traits consistent in how they see government, how they see serving. Um, I really, one of the things that I really enjoy about the profession, for me as a person, I think it fits very well with ministry, being a pastor, and the things I feel I'm called to.
Well, when you say you all come together on a pretty regular basis and share war stories, is that like completely professional, or it is a lot of laughter and tears?
A lot of laughter, tears, a lot of, oh, your council did that? Let me tell you this story.
Oh,
things that never make it to the papers or yeah. But yeah, a lot of laughter, sometimes tears. You hate to see a brother fall. Yeah.
You fought a good fight, yes.
Yeah, and I don't know if most people realize this. Even though we're hired by cities, city managers are completely at will. So where they devote the majority says they don't want you, you're done. There's no union to protect you, no action. You're totally at will. And again, in a state like Michigan, where we're very unionized, a lot of employee rules. The day they vote, as we say on any given Monday, now you kind of have a sense of when that's coming. So that's sort of the risk of the profession, but it's also the exciting part. That they present this job and I can do it and stay employed.
Now I forgot to write this. I said I didn't write this down, so I can come back to it. I didn't write it down, so maybe it'll pop back in my head in a few minutes. But pertaining to your profession specifically and other governmental positions that you may know of, what would you like to see pertaining to not just the profession, but Blacks in the profession or professions? And what do you see concerning that, or what do you feel about that?
Even back when I was in graduate school, I tried to recruit people to come to public administration school. I think this is a good profession. I'd love to see more Black people know about it. A lot of people you'd think a lot of people still don't know about this profession. Again, we know about elected officials, those kind of things, but when you just build a tremendous wealth of skills and knowledge, you make a decent living, in terms of working in government. And man, you get to have a tremendous impact on people's lives. If you're into this idea of public service, it's a tremendous place and area to serve. And some people come to this profession while they go into other areas, but man, you will have just a broad wealth of knowledge. You will come in contact with so many professions. Even when I got into this, I had no idea of the broad range of things I would learn, things I've been involved in. I work with all types of engineers. I've had opportunity to be over cemeteries, over general aviation airports, travel, just things I really didn't realize I would necessarily be doing in this profession, that I've really been blessed to do, experiences I've been able to have that I don't know if I'd otherwise have had. So again, I've had a chance to learn about theater and buildings, and sometimes it can be boring to be around because I look you look at the world differently. Right. I go to a city and see a water tower. Okay, that's probably the highest elevation in the community. Nobody else other than water treatment plant just think that. Maybe some engineers. Yes. So those are things that kind of go through your head. We had some parts of the city, country had unusual snow last week. And I'm thinking about, man, they don't have salt, they don't have plow trucks. Just you think that way.
Yeah.
And I spent about 15 years not in the profession, and I still think that way.
Yeah, that's that is that is extremely expansive.
Yes,
into a lot of different areas. Now, I want to ask you. You can go out in whatever direction on this, because from a distance, some 1,000 miles away now. I know that you're on the radio sometime.
Yes.
So if you want to give a shout out to what that is, what that involves, when it is, what do you do, and what do you want to get across, those kind of things like that.
Yeah, I for about 20 years I've been an analyst at election time, our local station, WUVS 103.7 The Beat. Then since COVID, last 4 years, I was on a program called Torn in Two. We recently changed the name to Community Focus. That's broadcast Facebook, streamed on Facebook, and to about 4 or 5 radio stations all over the country, live.
How many?
4 or 5 radio stations all over.
Oh,
There's several in Michigan, a couple down in Florida.
and what's the name of it? It was Torn in Two, but now it's what?
It's called Community Focus.
Oh, okay.
At 103.7 The Beat in Muskegon. And gosh, it's been a tremendous opportunity to educate and inform people. We have interviewed people all over the country. I forget his name, but most of our people be talking about somebody national. We go, yeah, we interviewed. So we've had some tremendous interviews, political candidates. Interviewed Hakeem Jeffries just before election. Didn't realize he had Cory Booker. Didn't realize he had Grand Rapids, Michigan.
He what?
He had a connection to Grand Rapids, Michigan. His family came to Grand Rapids early on. Knew all about West Michigan.
Cory Booker.
Yes. Total surprise to us. Gosh, we've interviewed governors, elected officials, we've interviewed people in entertainment, actors. So it's just been a good experience, and we're really proud of the fact we get to educate the community. We've talked about things from from health to new medications, breaking treatment areas like dementia, and so I'm really proud of that program. For me, my life's about public service. That's what it is. And you see these degrees hanging on my wall. I finally did it after I don't know how many years. I never really hung my degrees up, but I didn't have a place to put them at home. But what these mean to me, and people may think they mean things, that means that one, I was blessed by God to be able to get this education. And it's only been for one reason: to serve. And so whether I'm serving at City Hall, when I'm on the radio, I'm trying to find ways to serve the community, try to help people, educate people, inform people. That's not only is that my life in public service, and I believe that's my life as a believer. And so it's another opportunity to do that. And I'm grateful to Paul Billings, the general manager of the station, for asking me to do it and trusting us to do that program every week.
How often is Community Focus on?
It's every Friday at 2 p.m. live. And then it's on Facebook. It's repeated, so you can go to our page and see it anytime.
Go to which page?
Go to 103.7.
103.7.
Or just Community Focus.
Or Community Focus. Okay.
Yeah, the whole staff with Gregory Roberts.
Great. I was at I was at the Final Four basketball college last year. Yeah. Connected with someone that we grew up with, and we had a great dinner, and we talked about different things. He began to talk about this, and when he was on there and what he expressed, and it was I was really touched by that. So when you mentioned public service, when we're talking about government, different levels, different positions, but public service.
Yes.
As you mentioned, for you, it's public service. And then with a format like this, where it is based in a community.
Yes.
But the reach, because of how things can be done now, is far beyond that community. Have you seen many communities are dealing with, suffering from, or being presented with the same type of opportunities from shore to shore in certain ways?
I'm not sure I understand that.
Oh, well, this is a smaller community, Muskegon Heights. When you have a radio station that goes out to different places in different places, or in communication with other city managers, do you find a lot of similarities in what different communities deal with, as well as the possibilities for the same type of opportunities from place to place? Yeah,
we're always faced with this challenge of getting information to people. You can have a web page, but nobody goes to it. You can send out a mailing, nobody reads it. You send out a council agenda, nobody reads it. So we're always challenged this idea of letting people know. We're putting in lead service lines for free to people's homes. And when we found out, you send a letter from City Hall, people don't even open it.
They think it's a bill.
You call, they see the caller ID City Hall, they don't answer the phone. And we say, no, but totally free to you. You know, so we're all faced with that challenge, and probably again now more so than ever. I think the mindset of people is if it's coming from City Hall, it's not good. If it's coming from government, it's good. So people,
it's the government.
They literally won't answer a mail. They won't return it if they see that on caller ID. So we actually had to have the company that's doing the work call people.
Yeah. Again, I have to ask: are you talking about me specifically, or you mean in general? People do.
Well, but again, this is a community I was raised in. But you figure, people relocate all the time now, not like more than ever before, and move to different communities, and you live there. But here, you grow up, you know people, or their families are elected officials or serve in City Hall. When you relocate to a new community, unless it directly affects you, you'd be there for years. You don't know who's on city council. You don't know anything about the decisions they're making till something affects you. And we do want to hear from citizens, most of the time. No, but you do. You do. I mean, you don't want to work in this vacuum where you don't know what people think. You don't know what people want. That's the worst way to serve. So you want feedback. You want to hear from people. You want to know what people think. You certainly want to hear that you're doing good, but you want to hear what you're doing bad. You could think you have the best idea in the world. We're going to run with this program. We're going to run with this service, and nobody wants it. And so, guys, send up no email, call, tell somebody. But we really this government works better when people say something,
right,
good or bad, but we get that input.
Right. Well, I have a question. What do you consider? Be as expansive or as narrow or as or as laser focused on a particular part as you want to be about that? What do you consider either good government or good governance?
I think good governance is people who serve doing the best with what they have to provide for the people that they serve, and never losing sight of that. I think if you are unhappy, there are some elected officials people are unhappy with, and I know this. You get who you got is who you deserve to get. If you didn't participate, you deserve to have that person if you don't like them.
Right.
And I don't mean that to say harshly, but we know in national elections, less than 50% of people vote. That number is much lower in local elections, where 10, 15, 20% of the people vote. But everybody's got an opinion.
Right.
And people aren't happy. I feel very strongly if you don't participate, you got a right to complain, but you really have surrendered your influence. So 80% of people have surrendered decision making to 20% of the people.
Yeah,
that's not what you want. That even if you're trying your best, you don't hear from 80% of the people,
right?
And that doesn't lead to good governance.
I'm wondering about this now, although I don't know how you'd measure and what you'd use to measure. But I'm gonna use a term: a good community, a tight community, a tight knit community. Those are words that could actually mean something, but they may not mean anything depending on who's saying it or whether it's it's something that goes out on sale. But in a community that is really engaged with one another.
Yes.
The community itself, the kids are engaged, the adults are engaged, the elder are engaged, the people with needs, special needs, where the community is really interactive with one another. Does that make a difference pertaining to the amount of participation in the government when it comes to voting or finding out what it is? What it really is in certain places.
Absolutely. Love to use the parallel school systems. Superintendent and teachers and administrators. But that school system relies on coaches and parent volunteers and PTOs and all those things. Local government isn't just us employees and elected officials.
Right.
We have all kinds of boards and commissions that require citizens, zoning boards and planning commissions and development organizations that need citizens participating. And so that's more people to have input. And so we get those different points of views and, hey, I want to put this building in, it's right next to this playground, and a planning commission says, well, that's not an appropriate use. They're not elected officials. They're people from that community who say, we don't think that's the right use for that piece of land.
Mm-hmm.
So there's places for everybody, other people to be involved. And again, that whether you call that close knit or want to know each other, but there's a role for other people to play, right, and help make decisions about government. Mm. And so, yeah, I think that that helps us all. Again, that idea of making for better governance. But we certainly close knit's not necessarily a bad thing. Could be, yeah. But the government, it still belongs to the people. Right. Doesn't belong to me and my great ideas. Doesn't belong to those 7 or 5 elected officials. It's still, if that community decides, hey, we want to vote, we want to elect all the relatives of everybody here, that's what that's what they get.
Yeah. You see them at the picnic.
Yeah.
This term public service, I was just thinking a minute ago about, earlier in our conversation, I was thinking about people who maybe got into a government position and then realized, no, I should be in a grassroots something or another, or people who were involved in things that were happening in the city or state level with something that was grassroots or something that had to do with the schools or children or something like that, and then moved into an office. Have you seen that happen with people and for yourself? I mean, as a matter of getting to where you got to, you went from political science, senator, administrator, and then the world opens up to all these other different avenues of understanding. Have you seen people who've struggled with it, but thought maybe they haven't been willing to take that step outside of the thing that they're in?
Yeah, I've seen people who are community grassroots leaders finally, get on city council, and it wasn't like they thought. Mm. They're no longer, grassroots community organizer, motivating people. Usually they're based around a single issue, or they're just mad at City Hall. Once you're an elected official, all of a sudden you realize, I've got to make some tough decisions, or you know what? We got X number of dollars, which means I got to decide where to spread it around. So you just say we don't have enough firefighters until you realize, okay, but I got to share this money with the water department and the public works department and the fire and the police department and the inspections department. But if you're just interested in fire, you say we need more firefighters or we need more police officers. Then when you have to sit there and make the decision, it's a different ballgame, and it's not for everybody. I don't want to ever make it sound like it's easy. It's tough. You have to make some tough decisions. I had to lay off people. The first time I laid off people, I called them office one by one and told them. I just felt like I need to do that. I said, if I ever do it again, they just get a letter because I was kind of emotional. But no, I would do it. But they shouldn't find out in the newspaper or from an email. But that was tough. I mean, these are people I knew. Yeah. I've had to let people go that I've known a long time. I know their families. And I got to see them in Myers later on, see their families. Those are real experiences. So everybody can't make those decisions.
Yeah. Well, my hat's off to you. I understand it there. And my understanding is not based on understanding by doing it or wanting to do it. My understanding is that I would not want to do that. So my hat's off to you on that. And besides, if I was in that position, I would always choose firefighters. Yep. Yeah. Firefighters. Yep. What do they want? Yeah, give it to them.
Yeah, give it. Yeah. But and so you see some people who've been involved go to kind of grassroots. I think sometimes it's tough. Maybe depending on the level you're at. Like when I was in local government, after being a city manager for 12 years, I found it kind of easy to not pay attention to council meetings. Now, I still did things in the community, but I found it like people would come to me from time to time and say, what do you think about such and such? And I don't say, I don't know, because I don't know what I went into that decision. For, I don't know, over a decade, I didn't go to a council meeting. When I went one time when they almost didn't pass a budget. And I said, hey, you need to pass a budget. But I wasn't a decision maker anymore. And so I didn't want to be the guy who, the crusty old city manager that complained about everybody else.
It should have done it this way.
Yeah,
I told him.
Yeah, I didn't want to be that guy. And so a guy, if I got time to tell a really quick story. There's a guy.
You got time.
That was in Minnesota a couple years ago. Remember, was a police officer. Was accused of some racial incidents, was going to get terminated. Well,
right.
The mayor went on the news and said, the officer will be terminated.
Right.
The city manager
went
on the news that evening and said, well, he's entitled to due process. There has to be a review before he can be terminated.
Do we have a connection to that city manager?
He's from Muskegon Heights.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the city manager was 100%, and that was the process. You can't just, a person can do the most egregious thing in the world.
Right.
They're entitled, in many states, you're entitled to some kind of a hearing before you're terminated.
Right.
Now, the city manager didn't last 2 days on his job after that statement.
Right.
Even though he was 100% right.
Yeah.
I forgot why I'm telling that story now, but I forgot the question to ask. That happens sometimes, but those are kind of things that can happen. We talk about involvement in grassroots. So you kind of say, I know what I was saying. Is sometimes you don't want to make decisions on why other people are doing things. I mean, like everybody, I'll see stories and go, oh wow, that's a shame to happen, or why that happened. But sometimes you need more details before I just criticize, especially other city governments or things. I need more details, more information, because I know specifically for that what variables go in. It's like if you probably don't watch Chicago Fire. You're thinking, oh man, come on,
come on,
or guys after shift, oh, that's why, it's like,
yeah. I've never seen it, except I've only seen 15 minutes of it one time. So
yeah. It's like it's a general rule. Fighting fires is not that exciting and interesting. Yeah. People come from fighting a fire, they're the whole building's burning. They're like 2 feet away with a water hose. It's like, yeah, no, we don't do that. Yeah. Don't even get done. Walk out, no sweat, nothing, Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like, I'll hear things sometimes, the city did that. It's like, I don't know. Again, there's some things that go, wow, that's kind of wild, but some things you go, I don't know. I don't know what we're doing to that decision. So just certainly sometimes an article online, a newspaper are the worst sources to get information.
Woo!
Those easy. I don't know. I don't know why they decided that. But again, I think what a lot of managers, when they get out of the profession, they still have this idea of serving. Some will serve on board commissions. I hear of 1 or 2 that become elected officials. I think they do that.
Wow.
But if God says do something different, I would.
You have any insights, numbers on pertaining across the nation, Blacks in government? I would assume that some type of census out there has all the numbers on what that looks like. Maybe have a bird's eye view where there seems to be. I'm gonna put it like this. As far as Black people go, I know we had a whole lot more land 100 years ago than we do now.
Yeah.
In the era of participation, and there was a lot of things that happened, say in the 40s, and then there was things that happened in the 60s, and we say, okay, how's that stacking up now? Oh, surprisingly, there's less, or surprisingly, there's way more. As far as participation in government, different levels of government, or even in the voting process, how have we been doing lately or in recent decades?
And participation in government, from a voting aspect, abysmal. From participation, probably not a whole lot different than national trends. There's an interesting thing. this probably hasn't changed. And again, I'm not as current on some of these statistics. So there was blacks that tend to vote and participate in government also tend to be involved in everything else. You're involved in your kid's school. You're involved in the community. And so the people who participate, there's a high level of participation. The people that don't, which is a lot, tend to not do anything. And there's a big separation. Probably the one area where I think we really have to do better. We'll support a candidate, but we don't put our dollars behind candidates. And county, state, federal level, it takes dollars. Now that's on the elected side. On the employment side, so there's something kind of strange happening. This is kind of narrative. And so there are a lot of black people that are doing extremely well. At one time, if you're black, the federal power rested in the Detroits, your Clevelands, those major cities.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? As we become more affluent, what happens? We move outside of the cities, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But what also happens is, like a Detroit's population is under 1 million people.
Mm-hmm.
And so Royal Oak and Southfield, when all these suburbs of these major cities. But what also happens is your political influence decreases. So if I do a census of number of African Americans in Detroit metropolitan area, taking all of those areas, the numbers are up, income levels are up, but the political influence is less because they're dispersed all over, 3 counties and who knows how many municipalities. And so again, I'll go back to talking about that election map. There's a lot of us all over the country, but are we in places where we can affect who gets elected or affect how government serves? And so that's one of the things, except for a few places we kind of see. And there's just a lot of other trends happening in government. Federal workforce, as we speak, is being shrunk. Mm-hmm. Shrinking as we speak. Mm-hmm. For the last few years, local governments were actually, after COVID, hiring was actually up in local governments. Mm. Like a lot of things, we're just talking about this. Working in local government isn't just, hey, let me hire my brother-in-law to pick up trash. Their careers. If you want to be an inspector, you got to get an inspector's license. So we have to, 40, 50 years ago, let me hire my brother-in-law, my nephew's cousin to do this job.
Right.
Now, almost everything at City Hall is a profession.
Need a certificate, need a degree.
Yeah. We got a water plant. I know I got to have guys that can pass those state tests, become licensed operators. Got guys in water and sewer. They got to become get a distribution license. You work on finance department. Okay, I need at least a year, need at least associates in accounting. And you got to join one of the professional associations to keep up with changes in government and accounting. So I think there's still opportunities. I think you'll probably still see either opportunities in local government or companies that serve local government. But for Black people, you got to understand, it's not just getting hired about who you like. This is me. Cities aren't employment agencies. We provide service. And so those services, I'm looking for who has the skilled people to do the job. So I think as you see these suburban cities grow, they're starting to age now.
Right.
From suburban taking off in the 70s, they're starting to age now. They're about 50 years behind the major cities.
Right.
So now this is their first time where all of a sudden growth isn't going to pay for everything.
Right.
So we got to start looking at raising taxes, and we need a few more employees to do these things. That's creates jobs and opportunities. And so, are we in a position to affect where contracts go? Are we in a position to affect even who gets hired there? Because these suburbs where I grew up still grew out of a lot of close-knit communities.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people who are a generation ahead of you and I, who are in Roosevelt Park and Norton Shores, they graduated from Muskegon Heights.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's across the country where there was expansion of suburbs, white flight, different other different names for this. The reality is, or one reality is that the first places that the cities were developed, were the best places for infrastructure. They were usually by water, close to water, those kind of things. People decided, I'm sure some just kind of organically popped up and they figured as they went, but they were a lot of places were where they were because there was something there that made sense.
Yes.
And so when they began to expand, that didn't necessarily take all that infrastructure, especially the natural infrastructure, with them.
Yes.
And so there's a return to that. Well, when you mentioned that some of these suburbs, 50, 60 years old now, and a lot of the super infrastructures built in the United States were built between the 1920s and the 1940s and up into and through the World War II.
Yes.
So they're pushing 100 years old now.
Oh, yeah.
And we've been talking about they need to get replaced for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And there's been some tinkering with that and bridges and things like that. So how is that coming along? Because infrastructure, and I suppose there's different types of infrastructures now because of things that are happening with computers, but some infrastructure still involves the actual dirt, land, water.
And for a lot of older cities, close to crisis level.
Yeah.
Here in Mesquite Heights, we've got 80, 90-year-old water and sewer lines.
Yeah.
The city next to us, they've got wooden water and sewer.
Yeah.
So a lot of major cities, crisis level. Last couple of years, there's been a lot of investment in infrastructure, but that looks like that's going to slow down. A lot of assistance from federal and local government.
Right.
But a lot of places in the inner cities, again, crisis level.
Yeah.
So now you're seeing, again, suburbs are able to grow and keep up with replacing infrastructure. But now we got to up our property taxes a little bit because now we have to replace water, sewer lines, do road work. But a lot of the older cities, keep in mind, we got cities in this country 200, 300 years old almost.
Yeah.
Easily, a lot of major cities are over 100 years old.
Yeah. They weren't even made for cars.
Yeah. Yeah. And so a lot of places, and I can't tell you I even know, that's one of the two crises. The other crisis infrastructure is the retirements. And I don't know what the answer is, but cities, almost a third of their cost is going toward retirees. And, before we don't have enough employees to pay into the old system. Kind of what's happening with Social Security.
Right.
And we don't. And I don't even know what the answer is.
Okay. Now that you don't know the answer, I want an answer. Especially when you mentioned Social Security. When I was a child, Social Security was a problem.
Yes.
That they didn't have an answer to.
Yeah.
That's over 50 years ago.
Yes.
You got an answer?
I do not.
Still no? Okay, just check.
I've
been waiting 50 years and somebody said they had an answer. I thought you might.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I've never studied. I don't know what other countries do, but it's built on an assumption. It may have been built on a good assumption, but birth rates slowed down. More, we expect people to start living. People that retire at 60 and live to 90.
Yeah,
it's like we didn't see that happen.
Yeah.
So,
and living large in the 60s is not compared to living large in 2020. The large has gotten larger.
Yeah. So I'm ready to admit things I don't have the answer to, and I really don't know.
You mentioned that for cities, there seemed to be an increase in the size of governments, or so to speak, after COVID. Now, I think we do live in a place where we have a very short memory, and we don't need to remember everything. I mean, we don't need to just have our head be like a bucket full of stuff, But my observation is on the memory thing is sometimes things happen that changes everything or most things going forward.
Yeah.
And I believe that COVID was that for a lot of things. Yes. 2008 crash was that for a lot of things.
Yes.
A lot of stuff has not changed. 9/11 was that for a lot of things.
Yes.
The Reagan years and the things that happened in the 70s when gas was way too much when I got my license.
Uh-huh.
It never changed. Even things that happened in World War II. Things happened and then it didn't go back. So we're only a few years past the initial punch of what COVID did. And you mentioned that there's an expansion there.
Right.
What is there anything that happened with COVID that caused the way that governments function to have appeared to be changed forever? Or is that still something that's in motion to a great degree?
Well, in mind, federal government pumped a lot of money into communities and, post COVID, and that this end of 24 kind of saw most of those monies have to be spent or committed, a little bit in 25.
Mm-hmm.
But it's forever changed government. And it comes up now. Well, since COVID, we do it this way. This will sound crazy, but again, man, Zoom meetings, Microsoft Team meetings, and nobody going back to, hey, it's like we can or
I'm in. What
if we can do it over Zoom, we'll do it over Zoom. I mean, that sounds like a minor thing, but it saves so much time. We don't have to drive across town for a meeting. But we're not going back. We didn't use that term Zoom before COVID. Right. Now, man, so that's a major change. That you probably as a pastor, I saw this, but yeah, we should probably be on Facebook. We should probably have our church services broadcast some kind of way. Guess what? You ain't going back now. A lot of communities, didn't maybe thought about broadcasting their meetings. Now you got to go back. Some little bit of aggression, but public still wants to see those meetings now. Yeah. So things you ever think about. So those kind of things. How we secure our buildings, contact with the community. So all those things, I don't have been affected by COVID. Some and again, once you make some changes, you don't go back. That's still, as you say, if you go back to what's one thing that changed over the last years, one of those benchmarks is COVID. How police and fire deal with people, how we come in contact with people when we go to people's homes. That's still prevalent in our mind. What personal protection equipment are we using for all of our employees? That's now in our mind every kind of way.
Yeah. As you mentioned that, when I joined the fire department, they were really big. They were making a big turn on those kind of things because of AIDS, HIV. Yeah. And so this is a whole different turn. And what we realized then is that because of that, even with a priority to try to help save lives, different things like that, there was immediately laws that came out that really pertain to a specific medical condition.
Yes.
It had its own, it was like the medical condition was a living, breathing citizen within itself.
Yes.
There's thousands of other conditions, but this one had different rights.
Yes.
Even that the person we're treating doesn't have.
Yeah.
So big things, and we've hit another change in that area. I want to bring up something about as this is Black History Month. Yes. Over the years, so many things that have involved the movement, struggles, improvements, fights, aspirations of Black people in the United States has had to come through. What can we do with laws? What can we do with government? Is there going to be justice for all? Do we get a shot in the door? It's a completely political word now, almost completely political word to say reparations, but it has a biblical foundation. It has a foundation of things that has to do with rights and things like that aren't necessarily involved. You can use other words for what it's called, but in the connection to Black people in the United States, pertaining to governments, of course, maybe going to higher levels, but a lot of times the things that we thought of like DEI or what used to be, as I believe is an offshoot of affirmative action. It was a government deciding, or administrators trying to get something done, or people in Congress trying to push something because it said, okay, the laws are in place, been in place for 100 years, and nothing happened. So maybe there's a motivation. There was a motivation really that came from private sector began to do these things because the government initiated. Yes. Even integration, it happened after World War II it happened through the government, and then it began to happen other places down that road. It's kind of a long, I'm giving a speech now. So let me get to the question part. It's a contemplation of a couple of people. One of them you've mentioned, Andrew Young. But we can contemplate this Black History Month, we can contemplate all kind of Black people who are part of the movement of this nation or even other nations by what they thought, what they did, what was enacted through them. Andrew Young was one of them.
Yes.
Absolutely one of them. There's so many things that are happening right now that involve the government. What's going to happen? What's not going to happen? What's going to maintain the same? And I'm finding that I keep thinking about Andrew Young and Claude Anderson. Now, Claude Anderson, Powernomics, Black people need to do this. He wrote the first affirmative action program in the United States at the state level in Florida, which is where I am now. And I thought about these two persons who's giving their opinion. Now, Andrew Young, such a noble representation. You know, he's a mentor for a guy named Killer Mike. These two guys don't sound anything alike until you get down to the subject, the substance, not the presentation.
Yes.
And then I think about a Claude Anderson, who's been on the legislative side and government side, and he's been pushing what he's been pushing from a political science aspect, from a historical standpoint, from a government standpoint. And I'm realizing that this is a good time to be awake and aware about what's happening. Not just what's the biggest voice or what's the biggest thing said on this newscast or that newscast, because, I mean, they all have owners, and their owners push whatever they want. What are some? I'm thinking we're going to go after this long speech that I've just gotten into. I think we're going to have a little bit of a conversation, possibly, about where do you think, personal level, where do you think Black people need to position themselves, not necessarily politically upon parties, but how they need to position themselves as people, individuals, families, communities, groups, concerning the things that have been going on for a long time, but appear to be going to a different level, whole nother level right now.
Yeah. You know, all the people that invest always say diversify. Clearly, if it's not clear, government's changing, whether you like it or not. Federal government's changing, which means state government's going to change, local government's going to change.
Right.
One, you need to pay attention to the changes, whether they're temporary or long term. I believe fundamental changes are taking place, like them or not. You need to pay attention to those. But your life can't be what's happening in government. Right. What can we do, not individually, even as a family or as a people, in business area, in self-sufficiency? We say it over, but there's pieces to this. What can we do collectively in education, whether it's in your community, whether it's in your family? We do this disservice when, let's say, we look at federal government and say, well, they're not doing this, they're not doing this. And you start saying, you know what? I had a family of 50, 100 people. What can we do? Okay, maybe we can't buy Coca-Cola, but within my family, I got somebody to make sure my kid passes high school physics. And within my family, I got somebody to help give my kids advice about colleges to go to. Within my family, hey, I heard of a good place to invest. I can share that information. Or you know what? There's a building down the street, might be a good apartment building. Can we put the money together, invest in that, and create an income stream? So I think we have to start preparing. And this is no new stuff I'm saying.
Right.
But I think sometimes circumstances will force us to do that. Right. And so I think this is the time to start thinking that way more than ever, is that blanket or that protection we look for from the federal government, the state government. Nothing tells me it's going to be there like it's been in the past. Fair or unfair, that's probably not even a question anymore.
Right.
Not that we shouldn't still fight and argue on those fronts, but okay, what else do we do in the meantime? You may be a big proponent of public schools, but guess what? The world's not going back to charter schools and special schools. So how do we best advantage our family and our communities in this changing world instead of fighting it? So I look at some things you look at and say, it's not going back. It's not how we talked about COVID or AIDS. Some things aren't going back. So do I spend time arguing about what it used to be, how it used to be, or do I understand what's taking place now? I think we would say terms like, how's the game being played now? That just sounds so commonplace and lacks so much depth. But how are things being done now? Am I trying to pull the world back to what it was, or am I paying attention to the trends that are happening in the world now? And how do we build around that? When you talk about, you mentioned Andrew Young. Andrew Young saw something in the South before a lot of he and Maynard Jackson, which is that's not only bring corporate dollars, let's bring international dollars to this city in the South.
Yeah,
and they saw it way before a lot of people were talking about it, and they built them. They built the Mecca,
right,
in Atlanta,
in our lifetime.
Yeah, but it didn't start overnight. But it started with them seeing this is what this community could be.
Right.
1987, I believe. I remember when I was in grad school, Forsyth County, Jose Williams and a group of few hundred people went and marched because Black people weren't allowed to leave Fulton County and live in Forsyth County, pelted with rocks and stones. They went back a couple of weeks later, 60,000 people. I went. An attorney in Columbus paid for us. Marched through there. And today, of course, anybody knows Forsyth County and all the suburbs outside of Atlanta. This happened in my lifetime.
Right.
And so you have to see how and when things change and what part do we play in that. Same thing, all these small local units of government we talk about, if you moved outside the city where there was this power, hey, they're looking for somebody to be on a planning commission or a zoning board. You don't know what knowledge opens up to you, what opportunities opens up to you about things going on in your community, what things you get to learn. But nothing comes from passivity. Nothing. Just waiting for things to happen to you, or wait for somebody else to look after your interests. And so, you can't do it all, be it all, but can you talk to somebody that can, or encourage or support somebody else that does?
Yeah. Yeah. I believe, it's not a good idea to stand still and wait for the cavalry.
No, it ain't have to know it all. You don't. But the willful ignorance we can't afford, and it's shameful to stay willful ignorant when so much information is available. But it's a disgrace to just be willfully ignorant.
Yeah. When I speak of Claude Anderson, I could go to the breadth of a lot of different things he's spoken about. So once he starts talking, he talks a lot.
Yes.
And so if I just look at some of the things that he did, his and pointing out different parts of our history that we really don't talk about so much, and that from going from a population at the end of slavery, who, the amount of people who were literate was almost negligible.
Yes.
2 generations later, before the 1900s began, it's through the roof. He said that's never been accomplished by any group of people in the history of the world anywhere at any time.
Yes.
The amount of people who went from that, who owned their own land, who had their own production within 2 generations, who had built their own cities. And of course, we know stories about, we built stuff and it got burned down, burned up, flooded, different things like that. But he gives us this picture of how many times we were able to recreate things, not just music, not just performance, but we recreated industries, we recreated culture in a lot of different ways. We created, and it has never stopped and does stop. We have always had a challenge hanging on to it. We've had a challenge with it being able to be something that could be handed down to our children. There's been a challenge, and the challenge we could look at ourselves and say we should do this better, should have done that better. But the reality has always been a war against that too. It's not like there wasn't an actual fight against those. So from Claude Anderson to Andrew Young, Andrew Young says the same or similar type things, and he doesn't sound the same when he's saying it.
Yes.
And he said the only thing that has ever been a challenge, the big challenge to stopping Black people, had been extreme violence. And I remember it was a Thanksgiving morning when I heard him say that. He said it was extreme violence. So violence can take on different ways now, but the extreme violence was plain old ordinary old fashioned violence.
Yeah.
I would say up until about 30 years ago, because I would include the manner that of the great migration of Black men to prison, one of the greatest migrations in the history of the world, happened 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And so in this time, this is about governments. We'll still have governments. Both of these are guys who said you have to be engaged with the government.
Yes.
And both of them believe what they believe about who you should support. But you don't let people get away with things either.
Yeah.
And so, go ahead.
Now, again, you're here to talk about whoever you support, there's accountability.
Accountability.
That's it. Like, I still support you, but you know what? I'm not with you on this.
Yeah.
Which is okay. Because I support you, I mean, I'm with you on everything.
Yeah.
I'm with you on this, but I'm not with you on this.
Yeah.
It's okay to say that. Nobody should have your undying, 100% loyalty support when you elect them. It's like, no, I elected you, but you're gonna still hear from me. I'm with you on this. I don't support you on this. Because if I do too many, I don't support you on this, you might not be my person anymore. I might support you on 90% of things, just 10%. Just know I'm not with you. Now, if that number keeps going up 10, 20, 30, 40, election time, you might not be my person anymore.
Yeah. Both of them speak of don't be satisfied with just coming to the table so you can say I'm at the table. You're not at the table just to agree with the other people because they're so nice enough to let you at the table while the other people don't, or don't want you at the table, or want you to invest. It's like you're there to actually to do something. And that accountability, that's for people who are in those positions at the table. And that's for the people who vote for them, or the people who are under their direction, were government. So we mentioned that we are all part of the government.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to be accountable.
And it's that thing of, people talk about being at the table. You have to have a constituency.
Yeah.
So I get this opportunity. Who am I speaking for?
Who you represent? Yeah.
Who am I representing? And do I have some people behind me? Because sometimes you get to the table, but there ain't nobody behind you.
Right.
What you're doing or there. Are you staying connected? Are you still hearing from people? Or was your goal just to get at the table?
Right.
So you have to keep a constituency. Who are you serving? And sometimes you're just serving yourself.
Yeah.
And so do we gain as a people, as a community, when you're sitting? It's good you have this accomplishment. You're the first Black person to be this or that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Okay, now with that opportunity, what did you do?
Right.
When I was an undergrad and graduate school, both, just from the opportunity to go out and help recruit minority students.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, here's what you can get from being here. As a city manager, when I have the opportunity to go talk to kids in high school, elementary school, about the profession, that's my obligation. Hey, I want to see more people in this profession. Other people now, professionals, I'm thinking about doing this. Okay, well, here's what I can share with you. I come from a time where I just feel like that's my obligation.
Yeah.
Other professionals in other areas, that I come in contact with, hey, if there's something I can do, call me. And I mean it. Not just like, hey, I got to get rid of these 500 business cards. Yeah. But here's what I can share. Here's somebody I can put you in contact with. I mean it. That's not my job. I feel like that's my obligation. That's my service.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of, maybe white people and other people don't know we do this as Black people. I go to city manager conference, wherever. The first thing I do when I get there, I'm looking around, see where the other Black people are.
Right. Oh.
Yeah. Then they give me eye contact and head nod.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I'm like, what's wrong with them? I remember being at a conference a few years ago, because after a while you'd see the same people, and we were joking because we're all like our 30s or 40s. It was like, hey, like there must have been like a half dozen of us, and 4 of us had braces in our 30s. And we were like, hey, we just got that good insurance now, But you look at those opportunities, like, okay, I'm here, have this opportunity. How can I help? And I can tell what the experience is like. You'll be at a meeting somewhere, and there'll be another Black person that can represent the bank or a company. They catch you after the meeting. Hey, good to see you here. Something. Hey, here's my number. Give me a call.
Right.
It's like you make a thing of, I see you here. Now I want to know what you about. Or you can tell me what you're about. Because you had those experiences, you go, okay. And I hate using those terms like you're a sellout, because everybody has
boy.
for their job. But
yeah,
it restricts my private conversations.
Yeah.
Nobody restricts who I can encourage. So I don't want anybody to throw me. I say you know me, but I remember sitting in Sydney, Ohio, committed 18,000 people, 400 Black people, and there was municipal court, and I'm sitting in my office, and I hear some Black people walk down the hallway and say, "Oh, they got them one up here."
Yeah.
Now, I never thought of myself as that, but all they saw was a building full of all white employees and this Black guy sitting here.
Right. So he must not be qualified.
Now, you don't know me or my struggle with took me to get here. You don't know. I was, the first couple of months there, most of the employees didn't even talk to me. I had to build that and earn that. So
right.
When I left, they had to see me go. So you diminished the thing you think other people are doing. When I heard that statement, look what you diminished me to.
Right.
And so that obligation is two-way. That of getting involved with who's your constituency. If I'm there, it's good to applaud my accomplishment, but let me hear from you too. Hey, I see you're on such a, you got pointed this, can we chat sometime? Let me share some things with you.
Right.
So it's a two-way. If somebody's committed to serve, then you committed to, your commitment should be, okay, I want to get in there. I want to share some things with them. I want to talk to them.
Right.
So before you call them a sellout or what those other terms, did you try to talk? Did you meet with him? Did you see him somewhere? Did you try to share something?
Well, we're talking about the government, but we're really talking about public service.
Yes.
And so in a matter of public service, that term sellout means that if you do something, it has to look like this. It better be this, and it better be something somebody already did. And it better not be with somebody I don't like, except everybody says got to get to the table. Guess what? When you get to the table, you're the only one.
Yes. Yes.
So somebody, so what do you want? The term sellout. Okay, you tell me. Booker T. Washington, William Edward Burghardt Du Bois, Marcus Garvey. Which one was a sellout?
Yeah,
they were all three different, and their whole lives overlap. Which one was the sellout?
Yeah, you heard about all of them.
Yeah, you can throw Frederick Douglass in there with Booker T. Which one was the sellout? They didn't do the same thing.
Yeah.
Which one was the sellout?
Yeah. You go back to something you said earlier about being a Christian and being in government. Let's throw in Miles Monroe here in terms of what it is you're supposed to do. I think one of the things that's helped me is I have seen very clearly what I'm supposed to do, what my job is as a city manager, what my responsibilities are as a believer. I see them very clearly. And so I don't wrestle with those two. As a Christian, should I do or not do this? I remember talking to my church years ago when marijuana became legal. It's like, to be honest with you, there's no real studies out there to determine what health benefits are. Because before it was legal, it's not legal federally. None of the big places, Johns Hopkins, Mayo, had done any real research. So medically, we don't know from the places that are respected. But what I can tell you as a pastor, you can abuse marijuana like you can abuse alcohol.
Right.
Like any drug, like the oxycodone and the
prescription over the counter.
So whether I think we should have marijuana facilities or not, you have a personal responsibility. You maybe pastor don't agree with drinking, but if you went to Red Lobster, guess what? They got a liquor license. And if somebody asks me, if you have a restaurant, I don't know how you're going to be successful without a liquor license. If you want to have the sit-down style restaurant, it doesn't mean everybody come there drink. It don't mean you overserve people till they're drunk. And so that's what I say when I say seeing very clearly who you are as a believer and as a Christian, what you're called to do. And I think that when you sit table, somebody called me a sellout, but I know who I am and what I'm here to do. I know what my responsibility is. So it might hurt, but it don't shake what I do. That man that called me a sellout didn't know. You call me a sellout. I drive an hour down to Dayton once a week to mentor a kid in the community.
Right.
Now, does that make me a sellout?
Is that what a sellout is? That's what a sellout is. Huh?
So, but you don't. So when I walk by, I can't get too out of it because I'm locked into who I am and what my purpose is. And so I throw that in there, before we make those harsh judgments. Because again, everybody, if you work somewhere and got somebody's name in your paycheck, you got some limitations. And whether it's the federal government, the city government, there's some things you cannot do if you want to stay employed. And for most people, their family need to eat.
Right.
But there's also a level of, as a believer, this ain't the job for me. I can't do this. I can't do this. And yes, you should step away and trust God that He's going to find you another way to provide. Right. That's the part that is a sellout. You're talking about, I don't know, what people say versus I know what God's called me to do. I know that this violates the ethics and morals and principles that I know as a believer I can't support. That is the sellout. But there are things that a city or state or federal government has me do in my job that I don't agree with, but this is a job I've taken. I'm okay with that. This is my job responsibility. Police and firefighters, you may not have people's lifestyle, but I know this. Never, firefighters show up at the scene. They don't ask people who'd you vote for.
Nope.
Are you gay or straight? No. What's your politics on transgender? No. You got a bullet gun wound, we're gonna treat you. Right. Having a heart attack, we're gonna treat you. That's the important thing. That's the thing I'm locked in and called to do. When I come inspect your house, how you vote has nothing to do with whether you need fire extinguishers, whether you need walk and smoke alarms. And nothing to do with whether this contractor did good work or not. And that's what people expect out of your services, your local government service. So when you get at that table, what am I doing here? Well, I'm at this table because I was hired as a city manager for the city. That's why I'm at this table. That's why I'm meeting the bankers and the business people. So that's my first obligation. And my mind is never the idea that, okay, what does this mean for the Black community? Mm-hmm. But that's not what got me at that table. That's not why I'm at that table.
Yeah. You mentioned you touched on quite a bit there. I'm gonna turn to without letting go of that because you've spoken about the duties. What are you called to do in your job, in your position? What are you called to do in your life, in your calling? What are you supposed to be doing? I mean, for most people, the job is not supposed to be just complaining unless they have a specific article in a specific newspaper or something like that. I mean, there's people who do get paid for that. But when you talk about Atlanta, yes. Atlanta has the busiest airport in the entire world.
Yes.
They have the mecca of Black creativity, millionaires that just trendset in so many different ways. And then you mentioned Maynard Jackson, who was the mayor, Andrew Young, right along there with him. And they're coming off the heels, a bunch of young lions, and really a lot of respect, who were coming off the heels and said, and then there was different things that were placed on the national level, said, we're going to do this. They actually ran with it.
Yes.
Some of the stuff that people fought about, we get it. They ran with it. Yes. And so that when I was coming out of high school in the late 70s, everybody was going to Houston and Atlanta. And then Houston fell off years after that and came back to California. That never slowed down.
Yeah.
From 1970s to this point, the number of people who go to Atlanta to start something, to build something, to create something, to coordinate or has never stopped. But there was a group of Black persons who got together and initiated that. They said, "Oh, look, there's going to be contracts. We're going to first of all, we're going to build this airport. Everybody's going to have to come here. We're going to make deals with the airlines. We're going to make deals with the construction people. No, you're going to hire some Black people.
Yes,
you're going to have to do this and that. And of course, 50 years later, after affirmative action, DEI, one of the things that I saw in my time of employment was like, okay, well, affirmative action really means we're going to hire 100 people, and about 75 of them going to be white ladies. So, then about 15 to get us up to 90 will be people who come from who aren't here yet but are on the way, who come from different other countries and stuff like that. And then we're going to hire 3 or 4 Black women, and we're going to hire what? But the thing is, that was a deal. So when we look at somebody like Claude Anderson. He said Black people don't realize democracy is a team sport.
Yes.
It is a team sport.
Mm-hmm.
And so they think when they fight and bleed and die for themselves, that once there's a possibility of it coming through, that it's supposed to be spread out to everybody, and they get the skinny piece after all the pie is gone.
Uh-huh.
And so all these things were fought for, and they're right along. It's not a negative thing that I'm trying to say here is that both of them have said we've always done the impossible. And then we look at our history and we say, well, we didn't do nothing. No, we always did more than anybody else, and there's been a problem hanging on to it. So here we are at another time. Governments will still be involved, but government's going to be different. And if somebody says today, well, you can't trust the news. Anybody who's Black should never have trusted the news. So people say, well, we don't know what the government's going to do to us now. Anybody who's Black should have never known what the government's going to do to us now. And so our position should be like, wait a minute, hold on a second. We don't have to hear everybody's noise, and we don't have to act like everybody else. We just need to finish what we've always been able to recreate or start, and not be ashamed of inheriting what we fought for or what we are, even if it's not on a basis of what happened generations ago, but right now, we're in fights. And everybody's getting a bit, and we're still the ones that bleed. We're still the ones that we still want to put the most on the line. And so I don't have to. If I buy a brand new Mercedes for $150,000 and then somebody steals it, but it's covered. If the insurance company comes to me and says, okay, well, fine. We're gonna do our part. But instead of you getting that $150,000 Mercedes that you paid for and was covered, we want to make sure that your neighbors, they get a few cars too. And instead of getting you the $150,000, make sure you get a pickup truck that's about 15 years old. We got to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Because it is from a right heart about justice for all.
Yes.
But there's a responsibility in making sure that what I receive for my family, for my community, for my people, so to speak, that is that. It has nothing to do with stealing from someone else. Mm-hmm. And we can't be shamed into thinking that when we want something for ourselves that we've actually paid for or working for, that there's something wrong with that, because that's not what anybody else does. It's not biblical. It's not anything. It's just so I'm looking forward to how I'm not looking forward in like a great how government's going to work out, but I do realize whatever the nation is going through right now, the nation may not have been through it before, but we have. So
yeah.
So we need to keep that part intact. So whether it's Claude Anderson or a person like any of the people we've named, they may have sounded like they were on different pages, but they were all saying similar things. And it's time talking about government. Again, I say it's really public service. Public service. You have any? In a minute, I'm going to go. I think that was another speech in there too. But again, we'll go to. You have any thoughts about government on the international level? Pertaining to Black people, I don't know if you're watching what some of the things that are going on in places where Black people have dealt, but this is Black History Month, so
yeah, some. I think the same way our country views and treats Black people is why we make the same mistakes than in other countries internationally.
Right.
The same mistakes we make dealing with Africa, and why China's making inroads after inroads in Africa. I mean. I still feel like an American.
Right.
Maybe it's my introduction to government. I know there's a reason why this country I live in needs to have influence all over the world.
Still does.
I understand why my country needs to have spies and the Secret Service, all those things.
Right.
And so I understand why we need to have military bases in certain parts of the world. I'm not naive.
Right.
But so if you ask me this international play of Russia and China, we pretty much lost South America to China, and we're losing Africa to China.
Right.
Because the same mistakes we make with Black people in this country, we're still making all over the world.
Right.
And we haven't seemed to learn. There's a tendency sometimes to go like, what we said, that ain't got to do with me. It does. Just because the cost of my products, though, price of my egg keep going up or whatever people say now.
Right.
Yeah, it does. But to a degree, our country's making the same mistakes. The stuff we're hearing now is the same stuff. We said 60, 70 years ago, they were all clearly mistakes.
Right.
So we're going to send an army in and take over an area. Gee, that hasn't worked well for us.
No. We'll set up our own dictator.
Yeah, it hasn't worked well for us.
Yeah.
And we're doing the same kind of thing. So pay attention, see what's going on. It's causes to pray, but you only have 24 hours in a day, so much energy. So you decide, where do I put my greatest amount of energy? Do I spend 5 hours a day reading all this stuff online and being so where is it you have a certain amount of energy to put and have the most impact? You got to make that decision. And where some things I don't like internationally, you know what? I don't know how much impact I can really have. I may get a chance to write a letter or email to my congressman and express my opinion, but you know what? I got some other things that are higher on my priority list. And so we all have to do that. Kind of goes back to your point of, okay, where am I going to put my most time and energy?
Right.
Here we got a big issue with potholes. I'm more concerned about this pothole at the end of my street, than I am some things I have state and local level. When y'all gonna fix my street? Hey, my water's leaking. When is the guy gonna come and turn the water off? So where do you want to? You only got so much time and energy. Where do you want to invest it? And where do you want to have the greatest impact? That's probably the same thing we're saying about political influence, government. What we do as Black people, it's like, hey, where do we invest the most to get the most impact, to get the most results? Yeah, we've been through. This is Black History Month. We've been through tough times before. Let's not make a mistake of saying, we've been through difficult times before. How do we get through those?
Right.
I don't look at Black History Month as woes. I'm like, man, there's some heroes. There's some bad people. I'm picking. I probably maybe more this year. The last couple of years than ever before is like, I'm so inspired during this month. I'm, reaching out, finding new people.
Right.
We didn't always read about. It's like, man, some bad folks.
I don't recall whether it's our niece, Minister Leah Lyle, or whether it was Pastor Bernadette a few months ago mentioned that during the Depression and at a couple other times, because Black banks weren't actually part of the federal glove, they weren't allowed to be. When they crashed, they still had their money.
Yeah.
And so the Black banks were used to lend support to the other banks.
Yeah.
Our history is ridiculous in so many ways. Mm-hmm. But our ability to pass on, to continue to, but then, like I said, like Jackson said, it's been extreme violence. It wasn't always just a loss here or a loss there by our eyes getting attracted to something outside the community or those types of things. There's always been these things happen, but I believe we need to be wiser on that. And in public service, you mentioned the part about accountability.
Yeah,
that's just in all directions. Okay,
yes.
we send somebody to Washington or to Lansing or to the county building or something like that. Are we accountable for what they do? And when they get there, are they just glad to be at the table, or are they representing us? Or who are they representing? Did they go there for themselves, or did they go there on behalf of us and we're not with them anymore?
Yeah. What do people say? Well, y'all, I'm gonna vote for, but y'all only come out here election time. In that 2 years, did you send an email? Mm-hmm. Did you send a letter? Did you call? So you said only come around election time. Did they hear from you?
Right.
Or between election and election? Because I'll tell you this, they all keep track of constituent calls.
Absolutely.
Every single one. And I'll tell you what else they'll pay attention to, constituent dollars. And I'll tell people this, send your candidate $5.
Right.
You go on a list. In fact, you'll be surprised at the list you go on. In fact, send a check, because you send an email, they're gonna blow you up.
Look.
But you want to get some attention, send them a donation.
I think yeah, go ahead.
Now you're saying they need to hear from you. So you can complain, you say, you know what? I want some attention.
I think many people who've never stepped into this area of doing this would be surprised that if they want to get in contact with their congressperson or their state senator or their national senator or their governor's office, or even one of the senators who's sitting in Washington, D.C., you would be amazed at how quickly they will get back to you. They don't want you. And so there's whether it's you consider their response to be fluff or what.
Yeah.
They will get back with you. And if there's a second letter, it's like, hold on. Even if it was fluff the first time, it's like, hold on, I better check this out.
Yeah. Let me tell you what, one of the things I learned in school. When you get elected, day one, you know what your first job is? To get reelected.
That's it.
So they have dedicated to following up constituent calls. It might not be much, but you email, you're going to get something back. You send a letter, you're going to get something back. I get calls, hey, you're a citizen here, just called about such and such. And they know the citizen way off base, but I just want to follow up. If you can reach out to them and let us know how you're doing. They have staff dedicated to that because they know they got to follow us because they know those are people that hire them. So it's like they always respond to such and such. Well, that's such and such does two things. They vote and they donate money. That's why they get responses. So when you call Chris, I'm like, tell me how many letters did you send? How many things did you ask for a response to? And not just your manifesto. Those could be your manifesto, but
right. Somebody might be knocking on your door if it's too real.
Share an opinion or a thought. I ask a question that requires a response. You'd be surprised. You start showing up on the radar. You start getting heard. I have this thing where I say to people, which is say something in a way where you can be heard. Not confronting somebody. I always confront somebody in the shopping mall or parade. No, send a letter, send an email, go on their webpage and make a comment. If you don't get a response, let me know because it works. Because they have staff dedicated to doing it. They all have a social media manager now.
Yeah. We got a few more minutes here. Anything on your heart that already hasn't been expressed that you just want to share? Maybe I didn't ask about it. Anything.
And I kind of touched on this, and I actually have to speak at a Church about History Month. One of the things I'm least comfortable talking about is myself. And I've gotten more comfortable the last year or two only for this reason, which is, I don't need a life experience to humble me. I understand who God is. And so I walk in that humility. But I've also been tremendously blessed in this life. I was telling this to my wife the other day. I've been blessed. The education I got from a kid from Reno Street, it was God. I would call mom like, hey, I'm not gonna have money. She said, well, just keep praying. Keep working hard at school. God's gonna make a way. I've been tremendously blessed with all experiences I have had. And I want to die empty. And so I welcome opportunities to talk about my profession, talk about my experiences, help people, open up opportunities. That's the only reason I'm talking about myself today. But man, I've been blessed. And so like my forefathers before me, to tell somebody, look, a kid from Reynolds Street playing ball on Houghton, 9 people sharing a bathroom. I can tell you the way I got there, and maybe it'll encourage you, inspire you. Maybe I can share something to help you with your journey. That's why I do this. I talked about that march I went to. I've been in those classes, and I was the only Black person there. I've had teachers say confrontational stuff. I've had people say stuff, but the decision is, do I punch them in the mouth? But I've also had people reach out and do tremendously gracious things. When I talked about that professor who told me about public administration, I was a sophomore. He said, when you get to be a senior, reach out to me. My wife works in Lansing. I'll help you get a job. His wife actually knew Dad from political party stuff, got my first job in Lansing. And so I want to be a blessing to people in that same way, whether it's in this field, whether it's going to a school, whether it's even a totally different career. That's what I want to be in this life, as I'm moving through my 60s. That's what I want to be now. That's where I want to find myself. That's the reason I came back to the city's interim manager, is I had something to offer to still help this community. And so that's what I want to do and be.
I do. We appreciate all those words. I hope they fall on open. I believe they'll fall on open hearts and be seed for the mind of many. Also, where you're serving right now, I believe that there's a date that's before you that's coming quickly. I don't know if you want to share in that or talk about what's coming after that. If not, then that can be some other time.
Yeah. Again, I'm a full-time pastor. My church merged with another church in 2019, and so two of us pastor here. Pastor Doug Molier. I stepped down from a lot of the day-to-day responsibilities in February 2023 to be the interim city manager of Muskegon Heights. My commitment, which is always, I'll stay here till you find another city manager. It's been 2 years. They haven't found one yet, but I feel like God is saying it's time to return to some of my pastoral duties. I was newly married in September, so I have some other life commitments. So at the end of February, I'll be stepping down as interim city manager. I'll likely stay on for a couple of months, helping with some projects. We have a lot of things moving in the right direction. If we can do that in the right kind of way, I'll probably stay on and help with some projects for a couple of months to help keep the city momentum going. But I'm moving to some other things in my life. I want to do some mentoring, again, turn back to full time here at the church, do some other things at the church we haven't been able to do. But that's the big change I would make at the end of the month.
All right. Well, thank you much. And as a representative, this is of New Covenant's Community Connect, Bishop Dwight Elijah, Pastor Bernadette Elijah. I am Elder Chris Burns, thanking Pastor Melvin C. Burns II for joining us today, thanking you all for being participants in it, and just declaring God's grace and favor, open-heartedness, and just abundance of grace, peace, prosperity, and joy in every interaction as you go forth. This is it. Have a lovely day. Be blessed and be a blessing.